I stayed with my cheating husband, but now his ex-mistress is ruining my life. Judge me however you want, I don't care, this is my marriage, and I thought I made the right choice at the time. My husband is not perfect, but there aren't many good men in this world, and I'm not willing to try all over again to find a life partner. I am 41 years old, and I have been married to my husband for about 10 years. We both have very demanding careers. My husband works as a lawyer and I am a school administrator. We both work almost 60 hours each at our jobs on a weekly basis, and as we have gotten older, we have only taken on more work. We never had children since we agreed that we wanted to focus on our careers. Even though we were both very driven and busy, our marriage worked as we were very close and romantic in the early years of our relationship. We used to take turns taking each other out for fancy dinners and unique dates, and we loved slow dancing. Some nights, we would pay bar owners and pianists to let us keep dancing alone together even after closing. It felt like a dream, and even though our marriage changed so much over the years, I never saw something so devastating coming. A couple of months ago, I forgot my husband's birthday. I only remembered at about 8 p.m. at night and felt awful. I ran out to get a cake and flowers right before he got home. I started cooking his favorite dinner. When he got home an hour later, he walked into the smell of his favorite meal and saw his cake and flowers laid out on the dining room table for him. I gave him a tight hug and a kiss, and I told him that I was so sorry that we had been growing apart lately. I told him how much I loved him, and I promised that I would do my best to turn things around since I wanted us to reconnect. It was an emotional night. My husband also apologized, and he also agreed to commit more to our relationship. Sure enough, things started improving. It felt like the good old days. We set apart Fridays for date night, and we planned exciting, fancy dates to take each other on. Like when I took my husband to his favorite jazz club from back in the day, and the week after he rented a private yacht for us as well as a private chef for the night. It felt like I was falling in love with my wonderful husband all over again, but the illusion was shattered one day when I came home to find him crying on our bed. I never saw my husband cry. He was a lawyer, for Christ's sake. Either way, I sat with him and asked him what was wrong. That's when he told me he had been keeping something from me, and as our marriage got stronger, so did his guilt. I stayed with my cheating husband, but now his ex-mistress is ruining my life. I sighed and asked him for the truth. I told him whatever it was, I would hear him out. That's when he confessed to me then that he had been having an affair with an intern from his office named Eve for the past 2 years. The news hit me like a train, but he was extremely regretful about the entire solution, and he told me he had broken it off the day after his birthday. He begged me to stay with him, and he promised he would spend the rest of our lives making it up for me. I was heartbroken, and it was one of the most difficult nights of my life. I took a few days to let the news sink in, but eventually, I realized that even though he had hurt me, I still loved him. We had just started to repair our marriage, and I wasn't ready to just throw it all away. By the end of the week, I had decided to forgive my husband, and he showed me all the evidence of him breaking up with Eve, and he gave me all his passwords as well. That's when I saw that even after he had texted her that their affair was over, she just sort of ignored the message, and had been messaging him a couple of times a day for months, even though she never got a response. It looked psychotic. She had been having a 3-month one-sided conversation in my husband's messages, so I told him to just block her that same night. The next morning when I woke up, I had to do a double take when I saw that I had a Facebook notification from Eve herself. Starting at 2 a.m., she had sent me maybe 9 paragraphs long messages about how much she hated me and how my husband was her man and nobody else's. The messages were unhinged and extremely hateful. She even sent me multiple voice messages cursing me out and calling me a old wrinkled beach. I showed my husband the messages, and he was appalled. He apologized and told me to block her. Little did I know that would only be the very beginning of her insane harassment towards me. I stayed with my cheating husband, but now his ex-mistress is ruining my life. It was such a heavy time. I was trying my best to reconnect with my husband as well as forgive his infidelity. Meanwhile, Eve continued to message me and harass me from random and anonymous accounts and phone numbers. Eventually, she escalated her messages from just sending hate to sending her and my husband's old intimacy tapes. She would even send me screenshots of his SXTS to her. I won't lie, seeing those things almost made me leave my husband. But again, he was there to support me through it, and he truly was improving as a partner and trying to prioritize my feelings. We tried everything to get her to leave me alone. We even went as far as to try and get a restraining order, but the cops said she hadn't actually done anything to me, so there was nothing I could do. I was already starting to feel defeated when her messages took a dark turn out of nowhere. She started talking about unaliving herself if my husband didn't come back to her. She was saying things like if I can't have him, no one can, and that she would make sure we didn't just forget her. Even though she had been sending crazy messages for weeks at this point, these threats chilled me to the bone. I went to the police again, only for them to turn me away, saying the same thing. Well, only a week after I went back to the police station for the second time, I worked late, and I didn't leave my office till almost 10 at night. I have to walk through a dark parking garage to get to my car at the end of the day, and even though I live in a safe area, that day, when I stepped into the garage, I immediately sensed something was wrong. I started walking to my car, and realized that I felt like someone was watching me through the darkness. Right before I got to my car, I heard a woman's voice from the shadows. I turned my head towards the sound, and saw a young woman step forward into the very dim light of the garage. As soon as I saw her, I knew I was standing face to face with my husband's affair partner, the one and only Eve. She looked so young, her face was obviously swollen from crying, and her eyes were wide and wild. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as she spoke again. This time, I heard her when she said, "I can't let you have him. He loves me, you know?" That's when I watched her slowly raise a firearm and point it straight at my head. I froze for a second, and she opened her mouth to speak again as her face twisted in anger. "He loves me. Me." She shrieked as she started unloading bullets in my direction. I might be middle-aged, but adrenaline immediately started pumping through my veins, and I managed to leap out of the way and duck behind a car. She just kept screaming her head off and shooting as I tried my best to stay low behind cars as I navigated out of the parking garage. I called the cops as soon as I got out of there, and running away from the building was the most afraid I had ever been. I ran, and I was sure that at any moment, I would turn around and see her chasing right after me, ready to put a bullet between the eyes. By the time the cops got there, she had fled, and it's been 2 days since it all happened, and they still haven't found her. I haven't left the house since then, and until they catch her, I know I won't feel safe in public again. Maybe this is all my fault. Maybe if I had just left my husband when he first told me about her, my life wouldn't be at risk right now. But now it's too late, and I fear that she'll stop at nothing to get her revenge on me.